Name something that gets passed around.
A joint.
A joint.
Legalized marijuana is always a very difficult question.
The time is long overdue for us to remove the federal prohibition on marijuana.
From now on, I smoke weed exclusively with white people.
Well, I'll get higher next time.
They're walking on their pants with their cap on backwards, listening to Enema Man, the Snoopy Poop Dog.
There's definitely cannabis in there, and it makes sure that I can sleep now.
What's to keep somebody from getting all potted up on weed and then getting behind the wheel?
Don't piss off your old dealer.
Marijuana is not the kind of thing that ought to be legalized.
I know you're not supposed to admit that you smoke pot, but I don't drink alcohol.
Let's get out of here. I have some really good weed back at the hotel.
I used to smoke marijuana.
I don't care if an adult wants to smoke marijuana. They shouldn't go to prison for it either.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Radical Russ here. Time for Toker Talk Radio. Phone lines are open at 971. No, it's not. Old number. Wow. I haven't smoked enough pot today, folks. 650-LEGAL-MJ. That's the number. 650-LEGAL-MJ. If you're interested in talking. We're live here on YouTube, and thanks to everybody for hanging tight while I get things switched over. I had a lot of YouTube fans that were begging me to come back to YouTube, so here I am, back on YouTube. Glad to be here. Glad to have you all here, and I'll be back on Cannabis Radio as well. I tried to get the audio stream to work today, and the folks at Cannabis Radio went and reset everything after 2017. They came up with like new passwords and new settings and stuff, and I didn't know what they were, so I couldn't get connected before we went online today. But we'll be back on audio only on Cannabis Radio and video streaming on YouTube. You get both, folks. You're going to get both here on the Russ Belville Show. Very excited about that. Also, I hope you like some of the changes. I added some new elements, some new breaks and jingles, and fewer ads. So the segments now should be a lot longer, more content for you to enjoy. And as we get the RadicalRuss.com site built, we're still working on some of the parts of it. But this is going to be pretty phenomenal, folks. We're going to have the live streaming window going on RadicalRuss.com. And for those of you who become VIP members, we will have complete archives. That's right, complete archives going all the way back to 2006, all the way back to Chris Goldstein hosting the Normal Daily Audio Stash. And we will also include archives of my XM radio satellite show, my old liberal talk radio show from 2006 to 2009 will be available there in the archives as well. So look forward to that coming up on RadicalRuss.com. Eventually, we will have the VIP section. Also, we'll have a phone app, and VIPs who have the phone app will have all sorts of special access as well. But we're back here on YouTube. The technology has changed enough and become simple enough that I'm finally able to do video streaming again. Big thanks to some of the fans out there that donated the money to fix this laptop. Remember all the problems we had with this laptop with stuttering and streaming? We now have twice the RAM and a solid-state hard drive, so things are just working fantastic now. I'm so excited. Glad to be back here on YouTube. And glad to be helping you all out here with the Russ Belville Show. And hope you enjoyed the Super Bowl yesterday. I didn't. I wanted the Patriots to lose because Donald Trump wanted them to win. That was really that, and I wanted Atlanta to win because they beat the Packers. And for a while there, it looked like they were going to do the same thing to the Patriots that they did to the Packers, just blew them away in the first half. Unlike the Packers, though, the Patriots have a defense. And they were able to complete the greatest Super Bowl comeback of all time. 25-point deficit. Unbelievable. Stay tuned. We've got another anti-drug PSA coming up. And when we come back, we'll talk more about the prognosis for marijuana under the Trump administration when we return.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
In the interest of fair and balanced journalism, the Russ Belville Show presents the anti-drug public service announcement of the day.
Hey, Lindsay. I wish you didn't smoke weed. You're not the same when you smoke. And I miss my friend. I'll be outside.
This has been the Russ Belville Show's anti-drug public service announcement of the day, exclusively on RadicalRuss.com.
When you are starting up a medical cannabis business, you want a fired-up lawyer who understands the needs of cannabis consumers. The law office of Lauren Vasquez is your fired-up lawyer for the cannabis industry. Visit her website, fireduplawyer.com, or call 1-855-MMJ-LAWS for more information. That's 855-665-5297 for Lauren Vasquez, your fired-up lawyer, or email fireduplawyer@gmail.com.
You're not high. You're listening to the Russ Belville Show.
Say yes to your life. And when it comes to drugs and alcohol, just say no.
All right. Maybe you're high, too. Warning. Hits taken on this show are larger than they appear. Do not try this at home. These people are professionals. Or at least they aim you to say that.
I smelled some marijuana smoke in Vietnam.
A public service message from the Russ Belville Show. Remember, friends, there's more to life than marijuana. I just can't remember what it is. Why'd I come in here? You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation, only on CannabisRadio.com.
Welcome back, everybody. Toker Talk Radio on the air, 7.5 minutes after the hour. Glad to have you all back. You know, I've been talking about the Trump administration and what its effects will be on the world of legal marijuana. And I've had a lot of responses from folks. A lot of folks that come back and say, no, Russ, man, marijuana's too popular. Boy, 60% of the people want marijuana legalization. There's no way Trump would go after legal marijuana. It's just too popular. Well, folks, as John Hudak said back in Virginia, if popularity determined what administrations would do and not do, then we'd have universal gun background checks, we'd have public option health care, we'd have comprehensive immigration reform. If things that were unpopular weren't were things that the administration wouldn't do, we wouldn't have half the things that Donald Trump is up to right now. So don't think for a second that marijuana is just so popular that the government won't go after it. Consider that medical marijuana has been far more popular than legalized marijuana. Medical marijuana is in the 80%, almost anywhere you look. And yet we still had raids on medical marijuana. Consider that what the people want is not necessarily what the corporate people want. And it's the corporate people that really run this country. There was that study that came out a while back, one of the public policy studies, that showed that the input of the citizenry has almost zero effect on what laws get passed in our Congress. But the input of the 1%, the corporations and the extremely rich, has a huge effect on what gets passed and what doesn't get passed. So yeah, marijuana legalization may be popular with 60% of the human people, but it sure ain't that popular with 60% of the corporate people. In fact, a lot of the corporate people would rather marijuana would just go away and not be competing with their industry. And that leads me to the other talking point. People talk about, well, Trump's a businessman. He's all about business. He's all about money. He wants to see money being made. And since he's so into money, he wouldn't go after marijuana. That's business. He's all into business. Well, that, first of all, assumes that Donald Trump is any sort of businessman when he's bankrupted most of the businesses he's been in and been a fraud and a grifter and a cheat in most of the business dealings he's had. But beside that, let's take that at face value. Let's say that, that Donald Trump's a business guy and he's all about business. The marijuana industry is not a big business. Everybody on our side is getting so excited. Oh my God, marijuana industry is worth $6.7 billion. Oh my God. By 2021, it'll be worth $25 billion. Oh my God. Folks, one pharmaceutical corporation is worth more than the entire marijuana industry. One brewer, major brewer like a Coors or a Miller or whatever, one brewer is worth more than the entire marijuana industry. So who is Trump going to be listening to? His friends in the $20 billion marijuana industry, or his friends in the $200 billion or $2 trillion or whatever number it might be for the industries of alcohol and pharmaceuticals and for timber and all the other things that compete with marijuana? Which side do you think he's going to be listening to? Don't think that this can't happen. Don't think that we are not likely to be under attack. Another response I get is that, Donald Trump's got some people in his team. He's got Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel's really into the cannabis investment. Peter Thiel, he's got these cannabis people on his side that are going to be advising him. Yeah, but those people aren't advising him just about cannabis. They're advisors in general, right? And we know what kind of advice Trump has been getting from some of his people that he just goes ahead and ignores. He was advised not to move forward with some of the things that he's been doing, and he goes ahead and does it anyway. So don't get too complacent about where we're at. There were some people that thought it was a good thing in the hearings for Senator Jeff Sessions to be Attorney General. Some people heard some of his points where he talked about, the Cole memorandum was a good guidance for the Department of Justice. He said something to the effect of, the Cole memorandum was very effective as far as laying out priorities. A lot of people on our side heard that and said, aha, see, Sessions likes the Cole memo. Sessions likes the Cole memo. And the problem with that is people are thinking that Sessions thinks of the Cole memo like we think of the Cole memo. When we think of the Cole memo, we think, look, there's a list of 8 reasons not to bust legal marijuana. When Sessions looks at the Cole memo, he sees, hey, look, there's 8 different ways I could justify busting legal marijuana. That's the way I think Jeff Sessions looks at it. Think about that Cole memo. Think about it, how it says the priorities of the federal government as far as busting state legal marijuana have to do with whether or not the states keep it out of the hands of children, whether or not it's not being grown on public lands, whether or not it's being used as a cover for illegal activity, whether or not the state legal marijuana is making its way outside of the state borders, whether or not it's being grown on public lands, and so forth. There's like 8 of these priorities, right? And one of the comments that Sessions had made during his hearing was that the Department of Justice, while it set up these criteria, didn't do anything on tracking them. Didn't track it at all. Here's 8 things that if you go wrong, we're going to bust you, but then didn't bother to track them. And this has been pointed out by the folks at Project Sam as well. Jeff Zinsmeister, Kevin Sabet, these guys have all said that, hey, the Cole memo is not a bad idea, but you got to enforce it. You got to follow up on it. Well, folks, I believe that is what Jeff Sessions will do. I believe that the Department of Justice under Jeff Sessions is going to start evaluating the states. And when it takes a good hard look at the legal states, it's not going to be hard to make the case that the Cole memo has been violated. It's a quite easy case to make. Every bust that comes across the state of Idaho or Utah or Kansas or Nebraska coming out of the West or Colorado, that's marijuana that's been tested, that's been through the marijuana system, the legal marijuana system, every bust that happens is the evidence that they need to go and start busting marijuana in the legal states. It is impossible for any of the legal states to keep marijuana from its legal system from flowing over state borders. Impossible. I know people driving over from Boise, Idaho. They drive to Huntington, Oregon, 25 miles over the border. Then they drive back to Boise. It's a 75-mile trip. 50 miles to the Oregon border, another 25 miles to Huntington, then the 75 miles back. It's happening every day. And it's happening in Moscow, Idaho, across from Spokane. And it's going to happen in the Utah towns that are near Nevada. And it's going to happen to the Arizona towns that are near California. It's going to happen to the Kansas and the Oklahoma and the Nebraska towns that are near Colorado. There's no stopping it. And that'll be all the justification Jeff Sessions needs to start busting these states. Now, John Hudak made a very good point. And in the presentation in Virginia, he said he disagrees with me slightly. And the nature of his disagreement with me is the fact that as a senator, Jeff Sessions can be all the demagogue he wants about good people don't smoke marijuana. But as the attorney general, he has to think more like an accountant. He's got X billion dollars. I think it was $21 billion in the budget. Don't remember the exact number. But he's got X billion dollars to run the DOJ. And that includes the DEA and customs and immigration and the courts. And so he's only got so much money to spread around. And if he starts wasting it busting marijuana, he won't have it in other areas. That's John Hudak's position, which I think is a pretty legitimate opinion. However, I don't think it's going to cost the Department of Justice a whole lot of money to send shockwaves through the marijuana industry. How much money does it cost to draft a memo, to write a letter? Not a lot of money. All Sessions has to do as Attorney General is draft a letter to the governors of the 8 states that have legalized marijuana, telling them that any state official who signs off on commercial licensing of marijuana is in violation of federal law and shall be punished. That's all it took. Just the threat of that, the possibility that that could happen, was enough to get Christine Gregoire as governor of Washington State in 2011 to veto medical marijuana dispensaries. Think about a letter like that coming across about recreational, where there's no sympathy. They could send a letter right now saying, cease and desist, Washington, Oregon, Colorado, and Alaska, cease and desist what you're licensing right now. And then California, Nevada, Maine, and Massachusetts, don't start licensing anything. Now, this dovetails into what we were talking about earlier, about how these states now are pushing for delays, how the state of Massachusetts decided to delay from January to July of 2018, how the state of Maine has put a 3-month delay on theirs, how California and Nevada legislators are even talking about maybe delaying the rollout of their licensing. I don't think they're delaying the licensing rollouts because they don't know how to license marijuana. That's a pretty flimsy excuse when we got so many states that already have licensing programs. No, folks, I think they're delaying because they think that Sessions is going to put a stop to this. I think these states know that if they delay long enough, the Trump administration is going to make it impossible to license marijuana. And if they just wait long enough, they won't have to. They can turn to the people of the state and say, oh, gee, sorry you voted for legalization, but gosh, the federal government's going to bust us. There's nothing we can do. My only hope in this respect is the state of California. California is already talking about, becoming a sanctuary state with regard to immigration. So this battle between the Trump administration and California, hey, if they're going to battle them on immigration, maybe they'll battle them on legalization as well. Maybe we'll have such a confrontation between states' rights versus federal authority that might carry over into the marijuana world. But if any state's going to fight this, it's going to have to be California. The only one with the clout, the only one with enough of the federal tax money. 12% of the money that the federal government gets in taxes comes from California. Yeah, $1 out of $8 that the federal government spends comes from California taxes. That's the only state that can fight this.
There are white folks, and then there are ignorant motherfuckers like you.
All right, folks. That sound means that it's 4:20 here in the beautiful Pacific Northwest, live from Delta 9 Studios here on YouTube. Time for me to take my break. I hope you're taking yours. We'll be back in just a minute with more. Oh, our special exclusive interview with Eddy Lepp. Stay tuned for that. You know Herb Thrasher from the Herb Thrasher Flower Hour. Now get ready for Herb Age Designs for the proud cannabis consumer. Herb Age Designs, lifestyle gear for the 420 friendly. Herb Age Designs. We've got Frisbee golf discs and durable hemp gear. Herb Age Designs. We've got shot glasses, drinking glasses, coffee mugs, and beer cozies. Check us out on Facebook and online at herbagedesigns.com. And follow Herb Age and Herb Thrasher on Twitter.
You're not high. You're listening to the Russ Belville Show.
Well, when the president does it, that means that it is not illegal.
Okay, maybe you're high, too. Warning. Hits taken on this show are larger than they appear. Do not try this at home. These people are professionals. Or at least they pay me to say that.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
A public service message from the Russ Belville Show. Activism begins with ACT. The Russ Belville Show features the stories of hardworking grassroots activists working for an end to prohibition in today's activist agenda.
We're speaking with Eddy Lepp, and it's been a long time coming to speak to you, Eddy, because you kind of were there at the time I got started in marijuana activism. It was the Portland hemp stock. I have this picture of you and Pony Boy and Madeline Martinez, and then you were a free man. Tell folks again what you went through as far as from that moment I met you and what you were doing there in California that led to where you are now.
Well, as you know, I'm a Rastafarian minister, and through our church, my wife, Linda Sentai, who has passed away prior to my going into prison, through our church, we furnished land for cancer and AIDS patients and other people approved by the state of California for medical use to grow their medicine.
And this is back, when did you get started? 2005, 6, somewhere around there?
Actually, we started in 2000 is when we first started doing it. It just got bigger with time, and by 2004, it was 32,524 plants is what they say they took out of the gardens when they raided us in 2004.
And this was, it wasn't exactly like you were hiding what you were doing. It was right there, within, you could see it from the roadway, couldn't you?
Well, actually, Highway 20, which is the main connecting highway between Interstate 5 and Highway 101 north of San Francisco, ran right through the property, right almost through the middle of it. And the main garden was on one side of the road, which was about 23 acres. And then there were other gardens on the other side of the road, which were up by the main house.
And this was in Northern California. How were the state and county officials dealing with this?
Well, I was the first person arrested, tried, and acquitted in the state of California under Proposition 215. other decisions. The Trippett decision, for example, Pebbles Trippett had been arrested prior to 215 transporting a couple of pounds for medicinal and spiritual use, but she was convicted at trial anyway. But when it was in front of the appellate court, 215 had passed. And so the appellate court overturned the lower court's conviction. And so Pebble was a major milestone for 215 because it made it legal to transport 2 pounds of marijuana in the state of California, which a lot of people aren't aware of. But as far as, actually being arrested under 215, tried under 215, and acquitted under 215, I was the first case.
So you're doing everything above board as far as the state of California or local authorities are concerned, but it's the federal government that's got a problem.
Right. We actually found out while I was going to trial that the reason the federal government got involved was because the local sheriff called them and told them, hey, he's not breaking any state laws. We want you guys to come in.
Aha. Couldn't get you their way, so they brought in the federal government to get around Prop 215, basically.
Every year in January, we sent a letter, a formal notice, all certified mail and everything, to each member of the Board of Supervisors, the county council, the district attorney, the local sheriff, and the last year or two that we did it, we also sent it to the Attorney General of the state of California and the governor of the state of California, which at that time was Arnold. And we notified them and with complete legal descriptions, who we were, what we were doing, where we were doing it, explaining that we were growing marijuana for both medical and spiritual purposes, and that everybody that planted plants in the garden had a valid California medical marijuana card. You didn't have to grow marijuana or use cannabis to be a member of the ministry, but you had to be a member of the ministry in order to grow medical marijuana, and you had to have a valid California 215 card. It wasn't like we just let anybody come in and participate. We very carefully screened everybody and saw to it that we were in full compliance with state law. Mm-hmm. And the letter that we sent everybody made it very clear that we did not want any conflict, that it was not our intention to break the law, and that if they had any problems with what we were doing, to please notify either my criminal attorney, my civil attorney, or notify the ministry. And in all the years that we sent the letter, not once was it ever answered by anybody. No one ever replied to it. And so we therefore figured that, we're not breaking any laws, which, as I said earlier, it seems to be the case, because we were told that the reason the feds came was because the local sheriff brought them in because he couldn't arrest us.
So you're arrested, you're taken to trial by the feds. They get what exactly was the conviction and the sentence in your case?
Well, originally I was looking at 4 life sentences plus 40 years and $17 million in fines on 6 or 7 different charges.
Wow.
The judge threw all of the search warrants out of court completely and totally, and threw 4 of the charges out. And what I actually was convicted of was conspiracy to manufacture a controlled substance, which is growing marijuana, mm-hmm. and conspiracy to distribute a controlled substance, which was the marijuana. I received no fine, and I received a 10-year mandatory minimum sentence, which, was a long, it'll be over 8 years. By the time I get out of the halfway house, it'll be like 8 years and 2 months that I've been in custody of the Bureau of Prisons.
Yeah.
So it's been a long ride.
It sure has. And Literally a long ride, as I understand, because they take you to different places around the country. Tell folks some of the places you were incarcerated.
Well, I originally surrendered myself to Lompoc at the Low facility there, and they should have immediately sent me to the camp, but they didn't. I ended up being there almost a year, and then I had come up to San Francisco to go back to court. And when I went back from that, the judge sent a letter saying, "Why isn't he in the camp?" And they transferred me to the camp there at Lompoc, where I spent nearly 2 years. And then I got written up for use of the mail other than an illegal purpose. And they have what they call a DHO, a disciplinary hearing officer, who heard the case. And he determined that there was absolutely no evidence of any wrongdoing and expunged all the charges. But I got transferred on what they call a management veritable anyway, and got sent to a low facility, which you're supposed to have like 11 points to be in a low. And I had 0 points, but I spent 2 years there anyway, and finally was transferred back to a camp. And I spent the last 3 years in Florence, which is the high security prison where they keep the Boston bomber and Krasinski and all of those kind of people.
Which states are these? Are these all California, or which locations are these in?
Lompoc's in California. Latuna is in El Paso, Texas. And the federal prison in Florence, Colorado, is right there at the little town of Florence, which is about 20 miles south of Pueblo, which I thought kind of funny because by the time I got there, Colorado had legalized marijuana.
Right.
And I wasn't there, I don't know, very short amount of time. And my dear friend Tommy Chong became partners with a gentleman that owns one of the retail outlets in Pueblo. And so for the nearly 3 years that I sat there in federal prison over marijuana charges, Tommy Chong, who is an ex-federal prisoner on very similar charges to what I faced, is, a half owner in a retail outlet selling marijuana legally to people from all over the world. So it was kind of ludicrous, but
Yeah, I was gonna say that the span of time that you were behind bars in these various institutions or at camps and now even in the halfway house has been a remarkable change in how we deal with marijuana commerce throughout the country, and it's become legal now in 8 states to one degree or the other. How does that make you feel, and are you going to do like Tommy and get in on this commercial end of marijuana?
Well, I hope to go back to doing what I've been doing for 20 years mostly, which is being an advocate for the full legalization of hemp as an industrial product. My best friend, the late, great Jack Herrera, and I spent the last 10 years of his life traveling all over the world, lecturing and speaking about this. And what a lot of people don't realize is that Jack and I very seldom talked about cannabis or the uses of cannabis. What we talked about mostly was industrial hemp and why it wasn't being used, for the purposes that God intended it. And the most used commodity in products today is sea kelp. And sea kelp's used in between 12 and 1,500 products, everything from shoe polish to toothpaste. And it's been estimated that if they had the same freedom to experiment with hemp like they do with sea kelp, that hemp would be in 5,000 to 10,000 products within 2 years and over 25,000 within 5 years. So it's truly God's gift to his children, not just for the spiritual use and the medicinal use, but as an industrial product, it's second to none.
And we've had remarkable change in that area too. With Colorado's got hemp planted. We got Oregon hemp farmers that I've interviewed and spoken to. They're doing it in Kentucky and some other states. It looks like we're making progress there too. That must warm your heart a bit.
Well, I was speaking with one of the editors from one of the major cannabis magazines in the United States, and he was just prolific in his praise for me, and explained that he certainly understood, having been in the movement a long time, that had it not been for me and Linda Sentai and what we did, that it wouldn't be where it is now. And I was told time and time again when I was in prison by various prison employees that my problem was I was 15 or 20 years before my time. So it wasn't really a surprise to me, because I did see it coming many, many years ago. I knew that the answer, for example, one of the complaints in California was, well, we've got people growing marijuana all over the place. What about all these potential crime scenes, yada, yada? And our answer was, well, let's unite all of these people. Let's put all of these plants in one location with an open door, transparent policy with the local sheriff, which I had, to come out and look around anytime they want to, see what's going on, be sure we're on the up and up, and remove those potential crime scenes from society. And we had between 25 and 2,800 members to the ministry. And so, you got to look at it that we removed a minimum of 25 up to 2,800 potential crime scenes out of Northern California. Mm-hmm. And we realized that. And, that's what we were trying to accomplish, was not only to help the patients, but actually to help law enforcement.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that we see developing now that marijuana has become, cannabis is this cash crop commodity that's people are wanting it for their tax revenue. People are wanting it to be part of the green rush and make a bunch of money. You came at this as someone who was helping patients, someone with a Rastafarian background. So as you look at this developing industry, are you worried about this profit motive, about this green rush attitude that's happening?
Well, regardless of if I'm worried about it or not, it doesn't really matter. Just as I foresaw what was going to happen 20 years ago, I can foresee what's going to happen now. It is big business, and the big players are trying to get involved all the time. R.J. Reynolds is trying to get involved. The Scott's fertilizer companies are getting involved. And these are billion-dollar companies. And there's no way to get around it. I mean, America's based on capitalism, and it always has been. So I'm not at all surprised that there are people wanting to make money off of marijuana. Personally, I don't have any trouble with people making money off of marijuana. I mean, you're writing a story. Are you writing it for free? No. You're writing it because...
Well, there's also the aspect of we hear from growers in Northern California and people that have built up this entire economy built around the price of marijuana as a prohibited product, now worried about the price crash that's happening under legalization, as are some states that are depending on that tax revenue.
Well, the thing is this: California and all of these other states that are depending on it as tax revenue. I don't know exactly the word I'm looking for, but it's bullshit. Okay? Marijuana should not be taxed at any higher rate than any other agricultural product. Now, I know that all of the politicians in the world see this as the golden goose laying the golden egg, but they're completely and totally wrong about this. This plant was a gift to his children from Jah. It was not meant to be exploited by man or government. And the fact that they're exploiting it is ridiculous. I think back when California first legalized marijuana through 215, and there was this big hue and cry about everybody having to get a state-issued registration card so that they would be a registered marijuana user. And I can remember telling numerous public officials that I spoke to, look, I will be the first one to get that registered marijuana card for you. But I'll tell you what, even though I'll be the first one in that line, the only way that line's going to form is if I am standing behind the last guy in line that is on opates. You want to register a recommended or prescribed product like marijuana, fine, we'll do it. But you get a registration card for everybody that's out there that's on pain pills. You get a registration card for everybody out there that's on psychotics. You get a registration card for everybody that's out there using all these other drugs. And I'll be glad to get one for marijuana. But why are you singling out marijuana? Do you have cards for people that go down and buy a six-pack? It's ludicrous, and it's ridiculous, and it's completely and totally in violation of our constitutional rights, and it should not be tolerated or allowed by anybody involved in the marijuana industry. I mean, it's like the banking laws. It's a proven fact that worldwide there are traces of cocaine on between 90 and 100% of all the money that exchanges hands. And yet they overlook that through the banking and let them carry on their banking. But if it's got marijuana involved, they close the banking doors to them. I mean, the things that I see, the injustices that I see perpetrated against the marijuana community and the movement just are stifling. I mean, it's ridiculous. Alcohol is directly responsible for over 500,000 deaths a year. Tobacco is directly responsible for over 500,000 deaths a year in the United States. And marijuana, that there's never been one overdose death in the history of the planet, is, I mean, it's just ridiculous.
It sure is. Speaking of ridiculous, we have a new president. Does that give you any concern, or do you think that the marijuana juggernaut's just too big to stop at this point economically?
I don't think he wants to. I see no reason in the world he'd want to stop it. I mean, Trump don't hang out with congressmen and senators. He buys and sells them. Okay? I mean, I'm just talking historically the way his world runs.
Sure.
He don't hang out with them. He buys and sells them. Now, who does he hang out with? The other guys on the Fortune 500 list. That's who he hangs out with. That's who he eats lunch with. That's who he plays golf with. That's who he goes into business with. As I pointed out earlier, there are all kinds of major national and international corporations getting into the marijuana industry. Why would Trump piss on his friends? Because that's what he's going to have to do if he turns out to be totally anti-marijuana. Personally, I don't see it happening. I think that Mr. Trump may, in fact, be a very good thing for the marijuana industry. Where Obama didn't have the courage to follow up on his campaign promises and do what he said he would do, Trump may very well, in fact, do it. Because it is a cash crop. And it is, because of the way it's regulated, the goose that laid the golden egg. There's no doubt about it. But I mean, you only have to look at Colorado and look at the hundreds of millions of dollars that have been raised in tax revenue for the state of Colorado since the legalization of marijuana to understand why it's popular with the government. It brings in a lot of money.
But there is some concern in these governments that the ability of the consumers to grow their own undercuts that tax revenue. Wouldn't it be in Trump's friends' best interest to kill our home grow rights?
I don't see how.
Okay.
I really don't see how. And I suppose you'd like me to explain that.
Well, if you would.
I would be glad to. Did you ever hear of a little company called Budweiser?
Sure.
Did you ever hear of a little company called Coors?
Yep.
Did you ever hear of a little company called Mogan David?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but are these not fucking multi-billion-dollar goddamn corporations?
They sure are.
Okay. Now, are you aware of the fact that every American in the United States, and I repeat, every American in the United States has the legal right to produce, without permits, with no interference from the government in any way, shape, or form, 500 gallons of wine and 500 gallons of beer each, every year.
Indeed.
Okay. Well, Budweiser and Fetzer and Coors and Mogan David and all of these other billion-dollar companies, everybody in the world's got the right to make their own beer and wine, but they're still giant corporations making billions of dollars selling the same product.
Well put.
So I don't see how it can be an issue if Joe Blow is growing 6 plants in his backyard. They're still going to make their billions. There's no doubt of that. So why would it be a conflict of interest if people are growing their own? I mean, for God's sakes, everybody in the world can grow their own tomatoes. Everybody in the world can grow their own strawberries. Everybody in the world can grow their own potatoes. How many billions upon billions of dollars do you think this country spends on tomatoes, strawberries, and potatoes?
Plenty.
So, again, I'm just, it's hard for me to understand why there's a conflict.
I don't understand it either. I'm just reporting on what has happened. Nevada just passed a law with no home grow within 25 miles of a pot shop. Massachusetts and Maine are talking about trying to pass laws to undercut the home grow rights that just got passed in their initiative. So there are those that are trying to kill the home grow rights.
And I'm not saying that there aren't people trying to kill it. That wasn't what I was saying.
Gotcha. Okay.
You asked a question slightly different than that, and I gave you my answer. Now,
fair enough.
As to what they're doing, I do not agree with it in any way, shape, or form. Again, I will reiterate and go back to what I said earlier. Marijuana should be treated the same as any other agricultural product. It is under the direct control of the Department of Agriculture, where it is listed as a common weed. And you can get the Department of Agriculture's book of plants, and you will find it, I believe, on page 141 or 42. It should not be in the hands of the DEA. It should not be in the hands of Homeland Security or any of these other people that are determining what happens with cannabis. It is registered under the Department of Agriculture and has been for forever, as far as I know. And it's still under their domain. If it's listed by the Department of Agriculture in their official handbook as a common weed, do you understand the conflict I'm having trouble with here?
I totally agree with you. Absolutely, Eddie. So right now, as we're speaking now, you're currently serving out the rest of the time in the halfway house. So how are things for you now, and what happens after this?
Well, one of the agreements I had to make with the people here was that I would not discuss the BOP, the halfway house, or the federal government in any of my interviews prior to being released in the halfway house, which will be June 3rd. I will say this. It's much nicer in the halfway house than it was in prison. I'm looking forward to going to home confinement in the next 2 weeks, which I am sure will be much nicer than being in the halfway house. And after June 3rd, I will be on straight probation, which I'm sure I will enjoy much more than home detention. The people involved at all of these levels, whether it's BOP or the halfway house or probation or whatever, they're doing the best they can. And I could be very negative and say a lot of bad things about it, but the bottom line is they're overtaxed and understaffed, and it's a sad situation, but it's the truth of the matter. And I'll go into more detail perhaps after I am out of BOP custody, but for right now, they're treating me as well as can be expected, and that's all I can expect.
Well, that's good to hear. Now, so what's the timeline? What's the date that you get completely off papers?
Well, that's going to be another issue because there are certain restrictions in my probation as far as me attending events and using marijuana and growing marijuana, et cetera, et cetera. And as you know, I was sentenced 10 years ago, and things were a lot different then.
Yeah.
Right now, there's 30 states that allow marijuana, medical marijuana. And as you pointed out, 6 states, I think, that allow the recreational use of marijuana. And things have changed completely and totally. I believe it's Brubacher-Farr amendment that Congress passed 2 years ago, stating that no DEA money could be spent on prosecuting marijuana patients that were in compliance with state law. And as I pointed out earlier, I was in full compliance with state law. That's why the feds got involved in the first place. So I've spoken to my attorney, Mr. Tully, in Sacramento, and at some point after I'm released from the halfway house and from BOP custody, in other words, sometime after June 3rd, I believe we're going to approach the courts and see what can be done about my use of marijuana, both spiritually and medicinally, provided I don't break any of the laws in the state of California. And I've been told that after 12 months I can apply to have my probation revoked, and I believe we're going to do that also. I don't much sense to spend one penny, let alone the tens of thousands of dollars they're spending to keep me on probation when I never broke any laws in the first place. And everything the federal government put me in prison for is legal in 30 states now. So
right,
we'll see how it goes.
Well, we hope for the best. Absolutely. Reverend Eddy Lepp, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to me today, and we do wish the best for you. Is there anything else you'd like to tell folks, or ways they can get in contact with you, send you best wishes or whatever?
I'm on Facebook. You can get a hold of Heidi Grossman on Facebook or myself, and Heidi will see to it I get any and all messages. Sometimes it takes me a little bit to get back to people because I'm illiterate. That's E as in Edward, literate. Honest to God, when I came out of prison, Heidi gave me this cell phone, and I had to ask her, what do I do?
Yeah.
I didn't know how to turn it on. I didn't know how to access the phone. And she tells me I'm coming along beautifully, learning the phone and how to use it But the other side of that is that I am illiterate. It's not easy for me at my age to pick this stuff up quickly, even though I'm trying to pick it up. So it sometimes takes me a little while to answer, but they can get a hold of me, like I say, through Sugarleaf Productions, which is Heidi, or Eddy Lepp, or the Reverend Eddy Lepp on Facebook.
All right, everybody, get in touch with Eddie and wish him the best, and welcome back to the free world. At some point, you'll be completely free, and at least now you're freer than you were before.
Oh yeah. Like I say, they're treating me as well as can be expected, and I'm looking forward to going home to Heidi, and with any luck, there may be wedding bells in the future here shortly.
All right. Well, best of luck on that as well.
All righty.
My interview with Reverend Eddy Lepp took place a couple of weeks ago, I think it was. He is back home now. So congratulations to Eddie and Heidi. They're engaged. And we'll have another interview with them as soon as we can. Every time we want to talk to him, we have to go through this contact at the Bureau of Prisons because he's still on probation. And so my thanks to everybody who was involved in helping to get that interview secured. There'll be a written review of this interview available in Freedom Leaf Magazine, a sponsor of the Russ Belville Show. Check that out at freedomleaf.com today. You'll find my writing there almost every month. Got a piece coming out in the March, the April, and the May editions. For the rest of my writing, you can check out my High Times Radical Rant column. That's every Tuesday and Friday at hightimes.com. And, of course, weednews.co, where I write daily. Thanks so much for joining us here at the Russ Belville Show. And I hope you're liking the new format. I've been following the chat room over on YouTube, and I understand it doesn't allow links, and it's got a 200-character limit, so that's problematic. In the future, we will have IRC chat on the radicalruss.com page, and it'll be linked to your membership account. And so VIP members will have extra chat abilities, like the ability to post links and the ability to have emojis and that kind of stuff. Regular old listeners who aren't kicking in to the show, they'll still be able to chat, but they won't get all of those special features. And we'll continue doing the podcasting. However, the second hour Toker Talk Radio podcast will only be available for our VIP listeners. It's something we've talked about for a long time here on the show, and I never had the technology to actually pull it off. That technology is now available, as my podcasting will soon be hosted at Libsyn. Libsyn is the professional hosting that is used by Mark Maron, Adam Carolla, Joe Rogan. All the biggest podcasters use it, so I'm moving over there. It does give me the ability to do membership-based podcasts, so we can do some VIP stuff for our listeners. And what else? Oh, we'll have the my archives of live events, my archives of interviews that I've done throughout the years with various folks in the marijuana industry, all sorts of stuff. So that's coming to the Russ Belville Show's new website at radicalruss.com. Right now, it's just redirecting to the YouTube page because we're just rolling things out piece by piece as best we can. And sorry I wasn't live streamed on Cannabis Radio today. I will make sure that we get that fixed. They reset some of the settings for 2017, and I didn't have the settings, so I tried connecting. It wasn't there. We'll get that fixed right after the show. Podcast will be available on Cannabis Radio soon. Well, folks, that's all the time I got. Time flies when you legalize. Thanks for joining us here for our Season 5 premiere. Show number 883. Rapidly closing in on 1,000. And it's all because of you. We are 100% listener and sponsor supported independent cannabis media. Radical Russ Media LLC. I'm Radical Russ. For everyone here at Delta 9 Studios in beautiful legal Portland, Oregon, thanks for joining us, and until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it. it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it.
The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at RadicalRuss.com. The world of cannabis is